The man who loves walking will go further than the man who loves the destination.
99% of the effort is in the process and engaging with the process, and the result comes as a nice byproduct.
Your health will always be the cap to your ability to lead. What is your definition of ownership in a word or a phrase?
Radical responsibility.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Chauffeur. And if you're new here, congratulations. I'm so glad that you found us because we're a community that helps you lead well and live long. We know that you don't have to have extraordinary health to have $100 million, but we do know that you have to have extraordinary health in order to build a team and lead people, because your health will always be the cap to your ability to lead. And so what we do here is really tell stories of people who have made ownership theirs, people who are in leadership positions, people who are making waves in this area, where they are the example and setting the standard for what it means to live life differently, and ultimately, hopefully, can give you some level of inspiration, motivation, guidance to go along the journey as well, so you can live long and lead well. And so today I'm super excited because this is a first for us, and it's going to be a first over the course of the next 5 months, is really highlighting different members of our team, of the Own It team, of why they've chosen Own It, what their journey has been like, and why they're on the team. Like, what does this look like? What has been their process and their journey? Because I think this is something we really value about the team that we've built at Own It, is not only do they all have the same values, not only do they all have the same morals, but they've all been on the same journey and have set the same standard. And so the standard they hold each and every one of our clients to are the standards that they hold each and every one of themselves to. And so they live it, they breathe it, they're in it, and that's what's so exciting. And so today we've got one of our mindset coaches, Justin Noppé, here with us, who just has an amazing story. And just getting to know the man behind the coach, I think, is so critical. Anybody can be a coach nowadays. Anybody can throw that label on themselves. But what does it really look like to be able to go through and live the life, actually be authentic to what it is they do, actually be transparent in how they've been, and be able to open up to the story that's made them who they are? And so, Justin, it's a pleasure to have you with me today, and I can't wait to dive in with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for for starting this up. I think it's a great opportunity to highlight stories of different people and how we all connect.
So, Justin, I'd love you just to open up for our audience and tell a little bit about just where this desire for you came from to be a mindset coach. And kind of before we even dive into that, what does a mindset coach even mean to you?
I mean, it's an interesting question because it does depend on so much. But the idea of mindset coaching is really about, okay, what do you want? What is the resistance that comes up? There's a quote that you had, which was the idea of there's the person you want to be and the person you are today, and there's a tension between the two. And resolving the tension is ultimately what mindset is about. So I agree with that. And I think it's just this idea of we try and reconcile the ideas that we've got in our mind about, what do we want or what's going on in the world and how are we actually interacting with it? What are our feelings about it? And a mindset coach is literally the person who's going to lay out that bag of snakes for you, help you understand your thoughts, your feelings, your attitudes towards something that'll then influence your behaviors as well. What has been the pattern that you viewed this through for such a long time that we can then change the pattern if we need to and really achieve some behavioral results as well.
It's so good because I think that when we often sit back and we think about mindset, it can be very woo-woo, and nobody ever wants to tell themselves, oh, I have a mindset issue. I have something I need to overcome.
Exactly.
And it's always a tactic. It's like, I'm missing the tactic. I'm missing the thing. I'm missing the behavior. I'm missing the consistency. I just have bad habits. Well, no, it's actually a mindset that sits behind that, that's holding us back from realizing that real change that exists there. And so that's why I think it's so cool the way that this all comes together and really starts to help parlay some of these changes that are really purposeful, really actionable, and really helping people live in that tension in a healthy way to do that self-exploration. Now, I'd love to go into this concept of exploration for you. What did your journey look like in starting to apply this this tension in your life? What was the tension of what you were doing, who you were, whether that was when you were 15, when you were 10, when you were 25? What was that tension like when you first became aware to it? And what did you have to do to overcome it, to step into the man that you are today that loves now to do this for other people?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think I've got a bit of a story here that illustrates the point. The main thing is that in my mind, I always thought, oh, you know what? I'm such an amazing person. And, that was very much protection. It was very much armor that I needed, to be able to kind of live my life and feel good about myself. And as the years went on, the best way that I can come up with this is to tell you the story of how I memorized a chapter of Moby Dick and 100 digits of pi. I literally created a challenge for myself because I'm like, oh, I'm so smart, I can memorize so much. But the real trick of the secret is, can I memorize it and perform it and actually do the thing? Can I actually spit it out of my brain faster than someone could say it or read it? And so, 100 digits of pi is just for a lot of nerds, that's a goal. But then also for the chapter of Moby Dick, there's an author called Joshua Foer who wrote Moonwalking with Einstein. This guy was like an American memory champion. And he actually memorized this chapter of Moby Dick. It took him hours to do. And I was like, I want to match that or beat that just for my own sake. And literally, I managed to do it. I memorized it in like 2.5 hours, and I could speak it faster than anyone could read it. Even with preparation, it didn't matter. Pulling something out of your mind is a lot easier than reading it. And so 100 digits of pi, I actually have it on my Instagram reel. I managed the 1 year to do it on March the 14th, 314 Pi Day. And I managed to do it in 20 seconds. I managed to do 100 digits in 20 seconds because the speed of your brain is just phenomenal. And so the reason I'm telling this story is because I always believed that I was smart, but part of it was this idea of like, I need to have an external measurement so that I've got the self-belief of it, but I'm also showing up in a way that's actionable, that's creating change. And for me to do that, I need to be able to take responsibility for the duration of the entirety, of the process. So like there was no major celebration when I managed to do it. There wasn't fanfare outside with a huge parade and flowers and balloons and things like that. I'm like, congratulations, you did it.
Nobody out there with like a 3.14 sign that was just...
Yeah, exactly.
Nights.
There was no plaque that came in the mail saying, congratulations, you're a member of the club, And it made me realize that 99% of the effort is in the process and engaging with the process, and the result comes as a nice byproduct. And for me, that was really that difference in the tension of who I wanted to be versus who I actually am. Like, yes, I could get that result if I wanted to, but the fact that I've got that evidence in my background, I'm just confident. I don't need to keep that result with me all the time. But really, the result was because of my connection with the process. I had no resistance. I had nothing but joy for the process. And so literally that's how I coach clients now as well. Like, how do we find joy in the process instead of experiencing resistance and just wanting that result as well?
It's so good. There's a quote that says, the man who loves walking will go further than the man who loves the destination.
Yeah.
And what it's coming back to is it's like the guy who just loves to walk, just goes out in the morning and goes and walks, versus the guy who's like, hey, I need to get from LA to New York. Mm-hmm. Well, he's going to walk every single day. He's going to walk far. He's going to walk fast. He's going to go. And as soon as he gets from LA to New York, he's done walking. But the man who loves to walk will walk LA to New York 17 times. And so the process is what you have to fall in love with, which is what I just love what you're talking about here, because I think even the story comes back to validate some of that piece too. Is you said something that hit me, and this was like a big coming out party for me as well in my journey. Was I was never a process guy. I always wanted the result. I wanted it fast. I wanted it quick. I wanted to. It wasn't a work ethic thing. It was a hating the discomfort or hating the patience that I had to figure out and learn in the process that was just so hard for me. And you said something that was the joy in the process. That as soon as you did this Instagram reel of 100 digits of pi, you don't have to carry that around with you and say, hey, I did it, hey, I did it, hey, I did it. But it's rather, no, I know that I can be disciplined enough through the process of learning and being able to have this talent, this gift that I've developed because I've done the work. That now it's just a part of who I am. And I know that that can become a part of this identity piece. Now talk through this, because I think this is really important and critical for our audience listeners, because I would want to know this question is, what's the difference between a healthy understanding of doing what it is that you're leaning into to have confidence versus needing to do it to validate yourself in who you are and that what you're doing is good enough and that you are worth it and these types of things? What's the difference? Where's that line?
So there's two very interesting ideas here. The first is the concept of already. You know, whenever we're doing something for validation from others, the question is how have I already? How am I already? You know, to look at the past and see a way for, oh, wait a minute, I've already done shades of this already. I already have some of this already, you know? And so when you position yourself in like, I need to do this thing, we position ourselves into saying, because I don't have it now, because I lack somehow. And so we just look at it already and just highlight areas that we may have glossed over or may not have remembered, right? So the idea is very much we are already. So that softens the blow with validation and how much we need this thing for our own, you know, kind of self-validation to kind of prove that we are. No, look at the past. We already are. So we bring in this concept then of the effortless self. The effortless self is this concept of like, you don't need to perform or be anyone other than who you effortlessly are right now. The concept is the effortless self is the one that you want to validate for yourself as well. So I'll give you a quick example. I used to want everybody to tell me how powerful I was and how dangerous and how smart I was and, you know, all of those egotistical young man kind of things. But people kept saying, oh, you're so kind, you're so thoughtful. And I was like, shut up. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear the bad stuff. Tell me how edgy and cool and emo I am. And of course, after a period of time, I just realized that that's the effortless self. That's me. I am a thoughtful person. I am a very kind person. And it just pops out of me very naturally. I like to include others. I like to talk to people, and owning that as well, taking responsibility for those parts and owning that is a form of self-validation. Now, the part on validation as well is this concept of if you're doing it for validation from other people, self-validation from other people, I want them to say how amazing I am. We're basically chasing the gold at the end of the rainbow. We'll never reach it. It's always one step ahead of you. You never get the full amount of social validation that you want. But self-validation, true self-validation is just saying, I'm enough, I'm already enough, and I love what I'm doing. And so there's that joy of the process as well coming in. And I was going to say this earlier. This is really the number one thing that I coach for and I understand coaching with is the signal for coaching is emotionality. If you're experiencing the catabolic emotions, you know, anger, frustration, resentment, anything like that, depression, self-pity, those are signals that coaching can benefit you. Mindset is right there, right? How do we resolve that? How do we accept it and move past it?
That's good.
Right?
Go over those again, because I want people to really lean into that. I want people to understand, because that was going to be my next question is, how do people recognize, what's a simple way for people to recognize that mindset work would take them from where they are to ultimately where they want to go?
And this is it. Like some of the clients that we serve are very successful people, you know, so like, well, what can you give me? I'm already successful. But the question is, well, how are you measuring success? Yeah, financial success, absolutely, 100%. You know, but how many of your feelings and your, let's say your human needs, your nutrition, emotionally is being satisfied? And so if you're not satisfying it, we feel basically two major camps of emotions. The first major camp is the conflict camp, where we're pointing the finger at everything and saying, this is a problem, you're to blame. And that's the result of frustration, anger, resentment, irritability. There's a lot of that type of thing going on. So a lot of persecution. Oh, that person's stupid, That isn't a very good feeling. It's a very catabolic feeling. It robs us of our joy, essentially. And then likewise, if you point the finger inward, we've got this idea of depression, like this fatedness. I guess it's just my fate to be this type of person. This type of depression, self-pity, apathy. That's really what we're getting here. We're pointing the finger in and just saying, I guess that's who I am. I can't be this type of person. And we really see in a lot of clients, like those two groups, what is their inner critic voice kind of doing? And it results in those emotions. So the emotion is the signal, and any catabolic emotion is a signal to say, hey, you could use some coaching around this point. The coaching is just the opportunity to lay out that bag of snakes and for you to say, oh, I get it. That's why, because of this. And now I can take some action as well, right? Understanding yourself, accepting yourself, taking responsibility for those things, and then instituting change, perceptual change, mindset change, where you stop thinking in the same way. And so with fueling the process, we tend to fuel the process with all the positive emotions that we're going for. Now, I typically like to fuel people with 6 emotions in general. The first of which is playfulness, which brings joy. The second one is curiosity, which brings that emotion of like wonder, of interest, and then connectedness is the third. The fourth one is savoring, which brings us this appreciation. We start to enjoy a moment. We savor the flavors of the moment. And then we just appreciate a moment for what it is. The fourth one then is quite interesting. Sorry, the fifth one is interesting because it actually brings us our relationship with stress, which is pride of accomplishment, which can only be accessed through challenging ourselves. So again, we start to take, we start to get excited about the fact that we're beginning to challenge ourselves. We start to enjoy the fact, because that pride of accomplishment can only come through an appropriate challenge for your skill level, wherever it is. If your skill level's low, appropriate challenge. If your skill level's high, appropriate challenge. So we compare with ourselves. And then the final one is just anticipation. We're looking forward to something. So, put something in your life that just adds a little bit of flavor outside of the routine, whatever it is. A camping trip, a visit to a coffee shop, a family holiday away, whatever it is. It breaks that up and gives us more satisfaction out of our days, be in anticipation for that event as well.
Got it. So that's really good. And the reason I love that is because when you think about it, I think a lot of people just get so out of touch with their emotions, how they feel and what they're going through. Mm-hmm. And when people get out of touch of what they're going through and they just start to try to accomplish, they live in this world of instant gratification. They get in a lot of the audience that we serve through Own It, to being entrepreneurs, being business owners, being business leaders, people who are high performing, high achieving individuals who are continually, typically your type A's, they're striving for something new. They're striving for something next. And they fail to forget that simple thing. You said it, pride of accomplishment. I just love this concept of why we always say you have to do hard things. Why do you always have to say you have to get uncomfortable? It's because when you're uncomfortable, you ultimately give yourself the pride of overcoming. You get yourself the winning feeling. What does it feel like to win? I was talking to a lot of people who big group here in St. Louis, a company or a group called EO. And what they typically find is that these people, they over-index into their works and their careers. Why? Because they get uncomfortable every day. They're forced to get uncomfortable every day in decisions they make, in situations they're put in conversations they have to have. And so because they have that overcoming and that winning feeling every single day in doing something difficult that meets or is slightly above their current level of expertise, they're growing every day. They feel good. They have a pride. They feel like they're validated. They feel like this level of accomplishment. But in their health and personal life and family, they don't do that. They just don't seek discomfort. They don't seek those hard things. They don't seek those challenges. So they don't get the same feel of overcoming. They don't get the same feel of winning, which is why we so often feel like we're losing at home and winning at the office with this avatar. And that's just something that you and the rest of our mindset coaching team does such a great job of, is helping to bring awareness to that, while also helping to create the break between knowing what to do and then understanding what's in the way, or where the glass ceiling is or where the glass wall is, so that they can break through.
100%. It's interesting what you said about this idea about, taking themselves to moments of discomfort. What I found is, like, someone that I know pushes themselves physically beyond what I've ever seen anyone else do. Like, he's a good friend of mine. He makes it onto the European, like, CrossFit, listings. He's in the top 100 in Europe for CrossFit, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. And the very simple point is that he's like, oh, but I take myself to this place of discomfort every single day. And I'm like, but you've been doing that since you were a kid.
Yeah.
The discomfort that you were running to versus the discomfort that you're running away from, like his business. He's really scared to talk about his business. Why? Because somehow it's a vulnerability. It shows how, let's say, weak he is or something like that. So he's really not happy about going into that discomfort, or talking about his emotions as well, being vulnerable with his emotions, where that greatest growth can happen really in those places where he's so practiced in certain areas of discomfort as well. So it's really like you're saying, it's taking people to the areas where they need to challenge themselves, not just where are they comfortable challenging themselves.
That's so good. And I'm just such a fan of being able to get yourself out of the comfort situations, because I think when we are sitting in these comfortable situations, we, again, just like this guy with CrossFit you were talking about, is that's where you tend to go. That's when you tend to lead. That's where you tend to step into. And it's only through growth that you can become more effective. Like, here's the funny thing is, I guarantee you, if this individual started to actually over-index a little bit into the work things and into the conversations on the business things he's struggling with, it has nothing to do with the business. It has a lot to do with himself. And I guarantee you, if you started to break through that, the conversations you're having about himself there would actually parlay over into even the work he was doing in CrossFit. He start to see his times improve. He start to see fitness improve. He start to see his joy even there improve. And so it's all integrated, which is why I just love it in such a big way. You mentioned two words that we use heavily at Own It, and especially with our style of coaching that we do here, but catabolic energy and inner critic. Mm-hmm. I'd love you to dive into, for our audience, and just make it more tangible. What is catabolic energy, and what does that actually mean? Or catabolic reactions, catabolic feelings? And then how does that tie to what the inner critic causes us to do in terms of decision making and processing?
So the easiest way to understand it is kind of like to talk about muscles. If you're in an anabolic state, your body is building muscles. And if you're in a catabolic state, your body is tearing down muscle fiber. And so a catabolic emotion or catabolic energy is something that really, it tears you down. It brings down your energy. It consumes a lot of energy. So an easy way to explain that is to say, like, holding a grudge. Holding a grudge takes a lot of energy. In the beginning, it might seem like it's an easy thing to do, but to continually hold that grudge, you have to almost remind yourself to be angry, with this person. Even if they're trying to be nice and they're trying to, the grudge energy is incredibly taxing. It causes a lot of fatigue. So any catabolic emotion, so like I said, the two big ones are like the conflict emotions, like anger, and then the self-pity, basically, emotions that we feel, like depression. So those two camps of emotions are what we call the catabolic emotions. And then we move into bridge emotions, which have a little bit of catabolic and anabolic. And then we move into the purely anabolic emotions. And we try and bring a lot of our clients over to the anabolic. Why? Because the anabolic is where doing the thing actually gives us more energy. So easy way to say that is like, whatever it is that you're excited about, let's say, going on a trip, and you go on that trip and you've got so much more energy available to you. That's literally the emotions magnifying whatever current energy you've got and just building it up. So imagine a work day where actually you've got an abundance of energy. You haven't eaten your nutrients correctly. And this is why I'm personally over-indexing on mindset performance rather than, like, let's say, physical performance and nutrition and exercise. Because the idea is, like, even if everything holds the same, the person with the mindset is going to perform better, right? Positive mindsets, the anabolic emotions, you're 30% more creative according to the research. So that's more creative. And for a business owner, that means solving problems with a big smile on your face versus seeing that black and white. So a good way neurologically to also talk about it is the idea of when we are in the anabolic state, we're actually using the prefrontal cortex, the developed part of our brain, to actually think. We can see this with fMRI scans and things like that. When we're more catabolic, we're actually using the limbic system, the amygdala, which is your sympathetic nervous system. You're in a stressed state versus the rest and digest parasympathetic anabolic emotions, prefrontal cortex. So we can actually see this neurologically as well. So literally the idea is the catabolic emotions put you into a fight or flight response where all that you see is a yes-no choice. Do I run or do I fight? It's very much a binary decision for you. So in that way, what do the catabolic emotions do? Well, they prime us for survival. And so you asked the question about the inner critic. From 0 to 10, we've got a particular size brain or development of brain, and it's literally primed underneath stress to survive. How does it survive? By getting the attention of the caregivers for safety, security. And then from 10 to 25, we change to become much more socially minded, and we don't really care so much about our caregivers. We care about acceptance from peer groups. And that's, of course, to help us with, like, the tribal psychology and all of that kind of stuff. So the idea is that the inner critic voice is that under stress, what was the pattern that we used in order to get attention? Maybe it was throwing a tantrum and going and sulking. Then we would get attention of mom and dad. Or maybe it was being aggressive and hitting mom and dad. Whatever it was, whatever it is that pattern that we see in childhood. And then what was the pattern to get the attention of other people as well? The social validation. Were we the mean guys? Were we the bullies, the whatever, were we the people that allowed others to walk all over us because we thought, well, if we were nice guys, then that's fine. Those patterns are neurologically drilled into you for 20 years minimum. And then the idea is that we're primed to survive, but survival is very different from thriving. So that's why I say the catabolic emotions have a direct connection with whatever resistance is getting in your way of success. Because ultimately, if you want to play big and take a big risk on your business, but you've got this pattern when you were a child of, minimizing yourself so you're not opening yourself up to ridicule or something like that, there's something to resolve. Now, we don't need to know that, like, where did the pattern start, or like, oh, it's because I wasn't loved enough. No, like, we don't need to get into the psychology. Coaching isn't about that. Coaching is about saying, oh, we've got this pattern. The idea is that pattern is the inner critic because there's typically a singular pattern that overtakes everything in times of stress. There's not a choice of like 15 different patterns. There's usually one big overriding pattern that's a theme throughout our lives. And it could be different for everyone. And establishing what that pattern is very important, very important. And it will be established. It's not like you can take a test and know exactly what your inner critic is. You can say which inner critic voice tends to be more you. But as you go through coaching as well, you can define that inner critic voice a little bit more, and actually say, oh, that's what it is. This is my stress pattern response. That's what it is. And just by knowing it, we already have a lot more awareness around it, which means that when we do it automatically, we're like, oh, wait, we recognize it. We're like, oh, this is my inner critic. Got it.
The inner critic coming back. This is negative Nancy.
Exactly. 100%.
It's so beautiful. And so you could actually start to see like the benefit, right? Is like, you could imagine for somebody who's making a lot of hard decisions all the time, or somebody who's got a lot of pressure on them and they feel the pressure all the time, as to how having awareness around this, how having a leg up on this, how this would become like the big differentiator, the differentiator between people who are making decisions by default or who are making very intentional, purposeful decisions and understanding why they feel a certain way and being able to now deal with those in a more powerful way.
Well, this is the point, Justin, is like, so one or two of my clients are actually founders. Like they're starting up businesses. Like one of my clients is a MasterChef, Latin American MasterChef winner. And I'm like, this is incredible. This accolade is incredible. But that inner critic voice gets in the way when she's actually doing things for her business, like major things, shareholders coming in, and she starts to feel that inner critic rising up. And it's basically like this prove and defend, like, I need to show them that I'm somehow amazing. And I'm like, you need to calm down. And the way that we did this is we reframed and restructured her mindset. So instead of, her mind being set around this frame of like, I'm here to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from this person, we restructured it to be like, you are this person's guide. And just that reframe, automatically her mindset shifted to, oh my gosh, I'm their guide, which means I'm the expert and they don't know anything. So let me negotiate with it. Like, what do you prefer? What's your palate? What have you been eating recently? Would you like to be more experimental or more relaxed? And she, of course, got her contract. She got her stakeholders and everything. And the very simple point is just the idea about the framing around that inner critic can absolutely block everything. Relationships. Why? Because you think it's about me. And it's never about you. It's never, but and not in a mean way. It's not because you're nothing. It's because you're everything. And other people think that they're everything. So like, don't stress about it. Don't sweat it. It's easy. We just got to find the right frame. That's all.
That's great. It's so good. And I can relate so heavily to that because to be honest with you, the mindset work that I've done in the last 3 years has been the game changer for me in the way I lead, the way I am a husband, the way that I operate within my family, just everything. It's the biggest game changing piece, and where I've really focused in having it go hand in hand and in tandem with the data of heart rate variability, the data of understanding my habits that I need to do. And the crazy part is because our bodies don't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress, is all of a sudden when you get now exposed to this inner critic that's constantly going, constantly negative, constantly putting pressure, constantly putting these things in your mind, you realize that when you get that under control, HRV goes up. You realize when you start talking differently, HRV increases, sleep increases. All of a sudden, all of your data starts to move better. You perform better. You feel better. It's like, wow, I didn't realize how much having these things in alignment actually made a difference.
Well, that's it. I mean, I remember if you're familiar with Lane Norton, Dr. Lane Norton, he actually mentioned this as well, where he was saying like the biggest marker is psychological stress. And once you can deal with psychological stress, like all your physical markers just naturally improve. Your, low grade systemic inflammation, it changes, So psychological ease is really the name of the game. And it comes back down to like, what do you want out of life? If you want a hard life where you're striving for success, then that's great for you. But how about doing that and having it be fulfilling? So we're not changing the outside world, the external metric that we're looking at. We can still achieve those things, but doing it with a sense of fulfillment, not happiness. Happiness is not, it's one of the emotions. But the idea is fulfillment. Do you feel fulfilled? Are you incredibly exhausted when you go to bed and you're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. And I loved it. It was wonderful. I'm so happy that I'm living this life. So it can be something difficult that you don't have to be smiling, ear to ear the entire time. I mean, you might be, but that's the beauty of psychological, getting rid of that psychological stress.
It's beautiful. Justin, for somebody who lives in ownership and really understands what it's like and really just being in our ecosystem within Own It, what is your definition of ownership in a word or a phrase?
Radical responsibility. How much responsibility you can take for anything. I'm in need of exercise. Radical responsibility, right? Take ownership of that. What can you do about that? I think, there's a lot of nuance to that, but yeah, radical responsibility is one of the phrases that has lived with me for a very long time.
And what would you say has been the biggest thing that you love about Own It and the Own It ecosystem and the clients you get to work with and the team that we get to operate within?
I got to say, the concept of support is huge. And, you're really the sum of the people around you as well. The people in the Own It community are, great people, number one, but they've got the same value system, the values around health and wellness, which is physical and psychological. And that for me is rare because, you look around the world and you look around your groups and how many people will they have conversations with you about food, exercise, blood work. Like I can mention like gut microbiome tests and, people at Own It are like, oh yeah, I know that one. I've had that one too. That's a very rare thing. And then the mindset work as well. Like there's so many people that I can talk to that would be like, yeah, I've heard of coaching. Yeah. Wasn't that something that, Tony Robbins did or, and it's a vague concept versus people who are familiar with it. So it's really the sense of community.
It's beautiful. I love it. It's been so great having you on here, Justin. I just love that we're bringing our coaches on and highlighting them and really talking about their journey, why it matters, what it's like to be included in the Own It community and how it's really impacted them. And so I just appreciate you. I appreciate the effort that you put in every single day. And again, Justin is an amazing coach that we're just so blessed to have on our team. And if this is somebody that resonates with you, this is somebody that you're like, man, I want to get to know more about Justin, feel free to reach out to ownitcoaching.com and really lean in and ask about Justin because he is, I'm telling you, one of the most gifted mindset coaches when it comes to bringing out the best in you, being able to understand what's actually going on, being able to understand who you are because he's been in your shoes, he's walked in your shoes, he continues to be in your shoes and does the work every single day. I say there's 5 things that your coach has to have for it to be something valuable. Number 1, they have to share your values. Number 2, they have to be where you want to be. Number 3, they have to be getting coached themselves. Number 4, they have to have a massive value for you and a value for people and care about people. And number 5, they have to be able to understand the holistic integration. And Justin does all 5 of those in such a powerful, powerful way. And so it's been really exciting to just be with you and spend this time with you.
Well, I appreciate it, Justin. Thank you so much for everything that you do and bringing us all together as well. So really, thank you.
It's great. Guys, if this makes sense, if this is something that resonates, I want you to step back and go ask yourself this question. What is your pattern? What is your pattern? Do you feel feelings like conflict, anger, irritability, resentment, depression, apathy, self-doubt throughout the day? And you're just like, this is normal. This is just what I have to go through. This is just what it's required to be successful. This is what it looks like to lead people. It's a lie, and it's a lie by the enemy that continues to keep holding you back. And until you're willing to say, hey, I can actually step out of this. This is simply my inner critic. This is catabolic energy that's pulling me down. You're never going to step into the true leader that you're called to be. You can never step into the true success that's actually waiting for you on the other side. And you have to be willing to sit in the tension. So start arming yourself. Start being willing to lean in because you already have the capability that sits inside of you. And I'm excited for you guys to lean in and hear it again. So with that, guys, we know success is different. So own your different. And we'll see you guys next week.